This time, if you aim your weapon and you shoot forward, and if you turn left and right, everything seems to be okay. But when you start looking up and start firing, the character itself is not looking up, but the weapon is firing upwards. That looks a little terrible, and this is where aim offset comes into play, where the player will look at wherever the crosshair is going to go to. So let's go ahead and take care of that. We're going to do a very simple aim offset. We're not going to add any aim offset animations. We're just going to use a code to rotate the player's body based on where they're looking at. So first, let's go to our content drawer and go to our animations folder where you have your animation blueprint for your character. And here we're going to need to tell the game when do we want to activate the aim offset. Now in our case, we already have our anim states. So this makes it super easy for us because we can actually use our anim state to determine if the character is eligible to be going into aim offset. For example, if the player is unarmed, we don't really need the player to look up and down, right? And then, but only when the player is armed with a specific weapon, then we need to allow the player to look up and down. That is better than having the aim offset activated all the time. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new variable, and we're going to name this aim offset. Let's go ahead and drag this in and then do a set. To set this aim offset, we're going to drag in our anim state, get anim state, and then drag off of this, and we're going to do a select node. And the select node, we're going to right click on here and then change the pin type to Boolean. If we're unarmed, then the aim offset should be off. If we're armed with a rifle, we need to enable the aim offset. Armed with a pistol, we're going to leave it off because our pistol animation has it so the pistol is actually facing down. So we don't really need to have the player look up and down. But when we are aimed with the pistol, we want to enable the aim offset. And if we are aimed with the rifle, we want to enable the aim offset. Let's go ahead and connect this return value to this aim offset just like so. Now we have created conditions where only when the player is in a specific state, the aim offset is going to activate. For us to utilize the aim offset, we're going to affect the pitch of the player, which is basically the mouse going up and down. That is our pitch. So we need to determine what is our current pitch. So let's do a quick formula for that. At the very top here, you would notice that when our animation blueprint is started, it is actually casting to character and setting that as a variable character. So we're going to use that. So down here, we're going to go ahead and say get character, right? This is get our character reference. Off of our character, we're going to get our control rotation. And also, we're going to get our actor rotation. And the difference between these two is where we're going to get our pitch from. So if you drag off of this control rotation, you can do something called a delta rotator. So this is basically going to give you the difference between these two. And if you right click on this return value, and then if you split it, you're going to get the roll, pitch, and yaw. We're only worried about the pitch. We're not really worried about the roll or yaw. We're going to take this pitch and we're going to do a multiplication node. And then we're going to multiply this by -1. And we're going to go ahead and drag off of this and we're going to clamp it. We're going to need to do a clamp float. And we're going to allow this value to go up to a minimum of -60 and a maximum of 60. I'll explain to you what this minimum 60 and maximum 60 in just a moment. And now we can take this return value and promote it to a variable. And this would be our aim offset pitch. So here on the sequence, activate the then for node, and then let's connect this to our set aim offset pitch here. I'm going to add in a reroute and then just make it cleaner. Compile and save this. Now we have our aim offset pitch, and I'm going to explain this -60 and 60 when we go into our anim graph. Now in our anim graph, you probably have something like this. You have your anim state manager, which is going into a default slot, and it's going through a control rig into the output pose. So what I want to do here is I also want to enable the upper body, because there are certain animations that I only want the top half of the body to play. For example, the reload animation, I only want the top half of the body to play. I don't want the bottom half to be affected when the player is reloading, so that this allows for the player to move while reloading and such. Even firing the weapon, I don't want the player to stop to fire the weapon. I want top half of the body to fire the weapon, while the bottom half of the body continuously moving around. This is where we're going to get another slot and then set this to upper body, and then we're going to do a blend. So to do that, let's go ahead and get a a default slot and select, while having the default slot selected at the very top here where we have the slot name, we're going to drop it down and then we're going to select upper body. So now we have an upper body slot. We want the Anim State Manager to feed into the base or the source for both of these default slot and upper body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the Anim State Manager up here, drag off of it, and I'm going to cache it. So I'm going to go ahead and search for cache and click on New Save Cache Post. This is going to be cache underscore Anim State Manager. Now here at the bottom, I can now search for cache Anim State Manager, and I will get this cache version of the animation, and I'm going to copy and paste it twice and plug both of them into the upper slot and the default slot. And obviously only one of them can be connected to the control rig, and this is where we're going to go ahead and do a layered blend. So if I right click and search for layered blend per bone, I'll get a layered blend per bone node. The default slot we're going to connect into the base pose, and then the upper body we're going to connect it into the blend pose. Select the layer blend. On the right side where you have your layer setup, you should see it says one member and the branch filters is 0 array element. Click on the plus to add 2 members to it. Expand this index 0, and the bone name, we're going to set this to spine underscore 01. And the blend depth, we're going to leave it at 0. And here we're going to go ahead and do a compile. And now we got ourselves both the upper body animations and the lower body animations properly blending into each other. So your animation doesn't look weird. Now we're going to just move this up here, and we're going to cache this as well. So drag off of this, and we're going to go ahead and do a cache. New saved cache pose. This will be cache underscore master pose. Now we're going to use this master pose to implement our aim offset. So if you search for cache, you should get cache master pose. Let me move this back a little. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and call in local to component. Drag off of this local to component, and then we're going to search for a transform modify bone node. And this is how we're going to go ahead and implement our aim offset. I'm going to show you how this transform works in just a second. We're going to go ahead and complete the connection so it's easy for me to explain. So off of this, we're going to go ahead and call for component to local. And here we're going to blend poses by bool. So this is basically, it's going to take a true pose, which is going to be our default pose, and switch to a false pose based on a Boolean. Boolean is a true or false. If the Boolean is true, it's going to go through the true pose. And then if the Boolean is false, it's going to go through a false pose. And we created the aim offset Boolean previously. So that's exactly what we're going to go ahead and connect it in here. And this, we're going to connect it into our control rig, and the control rig should then be connected to our output pose. And the false pose is going to be just our cache masters. So if the aim offset is set to true, then we want to actually use this aim offset setup. And if the aim offset is set to false, then we want to just use this cache master pose, which is basically our Anim State Manager in our default slots. So I'm going to copy and paste this master pose here and then set this to false. Compile. So now let me explain what that -60 and the 60 does. If I select this transform modify bone, select this bone to modify option, and then set this to spine 02. And we can change this to see how, based on how the player reacts to this. And then the rotation mode, we need to set this to add to existing. And if I take this roll of the character, and if I set this to -50, let's say for example, and then set the aim offset to true, and if I go ahead and compile, you'll see how the player is looking up. And then again, if I set this to just 50 and compile, you'll see how the player is looking down. And this is how we're going to affect our aim offset. For our roll, we're going to go ahead and just take our aim offset pitch and then plug it into our roll here of our rotation. And based on how the character is looking, where the character is looking at with the cursor, the character will look up and down, and their body will rotate along with it as well. So let's go ahead and test this out. So let's save this. And then let's go ahead and play. Now if I press 1, I pull the gun out, and the left and the right is working perfectly. And now if I start looking up, you see the gun is looking up as well along with the player. And if I look down, you see the player is looking down. And then you can play with this number until you find that perfect spot where the gun properly aligns with the cursor. Again, if I grab my weapon out and then I can start looking out, that looks pretty good. And I'm shooting straight. And then if I look down, this one's a little off, but the upward motion actually looks pretty good. Alrighty, so that is all you have to do your aim offset. So folks, that's it for the aim offset. In our next video, we're going to take a look at how to create a dummy and then also shoot the dummy and have some damage numbers pop out of it. I hope you liked this video. If you did, a like button would be very much so appreciated. I'll catch you all folks in the next one. Until then, have yourself a great day.